friends and neighbors. Welcome in the light, where laughter's the answer and hearts are shining bright. With calloused hands and wits, so razor sharp, let's praise a place where love ignites the spark. In the field of dreams where sweat and hope combine, we'll raise our voices high and toast to the divine. Be your best and let your spirit always rise. Give thanks for every moment under sunny skies. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. Happy post-4th of July weekend. I hope that you had just a fabulous time like we did. We went out with our friends, as we have done for the last 15 years or so, and out on the pontoon out in Clear Lake, Iowa, where they have an enormous parade, which we rarely go to because it's just a whole lot of traffic and a whole lot of people. And I feel like, it's not to rain on anybody's parade, which it definitely didn't do on Friday. Beautiful weather. It was sunny and hot. I think it was in the 90s. A little bit of wind, and that made it a little more bearable, but just a great time to be out on the lake. But, if you've seen one parade, you kind of seen them all. So we always kind of skip the parade part, avoid the traffic, load up the pontoons with lots of coolers of prepared food and beverages, and everybody goes out and they go around and get pulled on the tube, and we just cruise around the lake, and then eventually we just link up and sit in the water for a few hours and swim around and tell stories and have a good time and celebrate America's 249th birthday next year, the big one. I guess 250 years. It's going to be exciting, and it sounds like President Trump's got quite a celebration planned. I guess, if there's one guy that you would definitely want to be in charge of an extravaganza, it is Donald Trump. If you've ever stayed at a Trump hotel or a Trump resort, you know what I'm talking about. They do pay attention to detail. It is pretty nice. And so I think next year is going to be, and I think it's starting pretty quickly. We're underway into our 250th year, culminating with next year on the 4th of July, on Independence Day, of 250 years. So this is going to be just a very fun year. I hope that everything in the world is going smoothly so we can focus on a big party, big celebration of a quarter millennia as a country that has broken away from the Empire of England, and a group of people that said not just, hey, we're going to revolt against the king. That's not really that unique. That's been going on for millennia, as long as people have been under the thumb of any ruler, which, by the way, kingdoms, in my opinion, like gangs, that's actually the default. That's the default of any type of government. Some clan will ultimately secure power and promise protection from other clans, and those become, whether they're gangs at first or families, probably start as families, become gangs that include more people, and they come into the family, if you want to look at it like the mafia, then eventually they become kingdoms, etc. And we decided, no, we're not just going to revolt against the King of England. We're going to go ahead and start our whole new government, a whole new thing that had been thought about and had been in philosophy and all of these amazing things that you would have, that has made this country what it is, which has been in the process much longer than 250 years. It's 1,000 years old, at least. Prior to the signing of the Magna Carta, you had things that were happening in Great Britain and in Europe, but in the English Isles particularly, that just drove people to eventually get to the Magna Carta, and then that went on to other principles of democracies and republics and rule of law, common law, control of some limited government and that type of thing. Now, this is not how it is today, even in many of the Western countries. There are still the rules and laws, the freedoms that we have in this country surpass those that are in other parts of the world. And even though I am prone to complain about taxes, that's something that even in this country we're still doing a little bit better at than everywhere else. Because if there's one thing that we know about clans and gangs and governments is that they will absolutely find a way to spend your money for you. And our government is not much different. They did pass the Big Beautiful Bill, the BBB, which is also the acronym for the Better Business Bureau. And so the BBB did pass on the 4th of July, signed by President Trump. And I guess to me, I do like that those tax breaks that have now become permanent, or as permanent as law can make it. So that's a relief on income taxes. Some people are complaining because they say that it's always a tax break for the rich, and I'll just, those are the people that pay all the taxes. So anytime that there is a tax break, it's always a tax break on the rich. Why? Because they pay 90% of the taxes in the country, period. So, if you give a tax break, the people who pay 90% of the bill are going to get a little bit of relief. And that is, it's always funny to me when Democrats in particular say they just got to pay their fair share. And I've said on this show before, they never explain what the fair share is. It is interesting watching Democrats suddenly become interested in deficits. Deficits only happen when the government spends more money than it's supposed to have. Debts happen when we borrow money that we don't have. And in both cases, those things, in my opinion, are bad. And then how they do the magical calculations with budgets in general in Congress is always interesting, but we're not going to get into that too much today. I am going to talk a little bit about taxes because when we started this country, we were upset about the way that we were being taxed. And of course, the famous phrase, no taxation without representation. And we felt like we were having taxes put upon us by the crown so that they could pay for their wars in Europe and their debts and deficits that they had incurred. And they put those on the colonies, and the colonists didn't necessarily get a say in Parliament about how those taxes were going to be levied. And so they didn't like it. And so for almost 250 years, well, certainly for 250 years, regardless of the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, we were griping about taxes for a long time before that. And what had happened is we'd been around since the 1600s as like an English colony in various locations on the eastern seaboard of what is now the United States of America. And for the most part, we were pretty much left alone. England had come to our rescue in the defense of the colonies in the 1600s and the 1700s and the French Indian War and other excursions into warfare with the local natives wherever they may have been, and occasionally with other European powers and interests. And so it's sometimes a proxy location for little battles that were going on in Europe on a larger scale. And so, they definitely did their part. And then, but for the most part, they let the colonies kind of just run the show. Obviously, they had a crown-appointed governor of each colony, and they followed the laws that were in that time in place in Great Britain. And so, we had kind of grown up generationally. And people say, the founding fathers, you'd say the founding grandfathers and grandmothers and great-grandfathers. We had generations where we kind of were just doing our own thing, living in America, starting our own thing, running businesses and having the opportunity to get your own place, to pioneer, so to speak, into new territory and to establish not only a homestead where you can raise your family, but you can raise your own food, and you just have a certain level of individual sovereignty that really sparked this entire great experiment that we've called the United States of America. That is something that has been a huge part, I guess, of my understanding of how things should be, and it's based on individualism, which obviously always puts me on the conservative side, quote unquote, of the aisle, because I believe in individuality, in individualism, and the individual's ability to own their time and their labor. And in exchange for their labor, they are able to do whatever it is, financially, religiously, whatever they want to do. And we can respect that individuality and the freedom of individuals to be that their own person in the United States of America. And that rugged individualism is in direct opposition to any type of socialism and communism. Obviously, the idea that the state thinks for you, the state establishes for you your path into the future. The state determines the price controls and so on and so forth. And I just feel like it's a defining characteristic of America, that rugged individualism that so many much smarter people than I have written about throughout history, particularly in economics. That ability to strike out on your own, to start something new in a better place. That has always been the American dream. And so for that reason, I like the idea of encouraging people to continue that pioneering spirit and to pioneer back to places like the Midwest, to places like Iowa, where we love to live, and to I feel like the more people that live close together, the more dependent they become. Whether it's in their neighborhoods, you have to live you're side by side with somebody else, and for some people they feel very safe in that environment, because you've got neighbors, and that makes them feel safer. But there always seems to be some conflict, and you have more expectations of the services provided by whatever level of government that you happen to have. And that's why you get to New York City, and our biggest city in the United States, and people are living right on top of each other, and they expect the municipalities to do much more than what I think any level of government should do. And then you get out into the rural parts of the United States, we kind of have to do things on our own. As I've said before, if you live on an acreage like we do, you are your own mayor. And you are your own parks council. You have to take care of your own lawn. You have to move your own snow. You have to have a well, so you're your own water department. You have to have your own septic tanks and leach fields, so that you can be your wastewater, department, and on and on and on. And you have to fix stuff, and you have to be able to build stuff, and you have room to plant a garden, so you need to be able to grow stuff. And then once you've grown stuff, you need to know how to preserve stuff. And those are skills and things that our founders, had to do. Everybody, including, like John Adams, the second president of the United States, he was not a particularly very good farmer. He was an outstanding attorney, but he still had to have his own little farm that, Abigail had to run while he was gone so often, and keep things moving. That's how you fed your family. And you sold your excess at market, and you bartered and traded and that type of thing. And I feel like that is a wonderful, wonderful way to live. And you can really only do that in rural areas, regardless of where that is. Once you live in the concrete jungle, it's just very difficult to have that type of experience. And I know that there are urban gardens and things like that, and I think that's wonderful. And I appreciate that those folks with the green thumb in the urban environment are able to do that. But that rugged individualist in me says, I need elbow room. I need to be able to spread out. I need to be able to feel like I've got my own little dookie, my own little kingdom. And so that's how we established Sunnyside. We didn't even establish it. It was established in 1914. So it's just carrying on a long time tradition of that rugged individualist that is able to strike out and do that which you will with your land. But the rule in my family is that do that which you will with your land. But remember, you have to improve it. You cannot just let it fall apart. You should, whatever you buy, whatever you take under your responsibility, you need to improve. And so that means not just practical, that it needs to be able to perform whatever task it is that you've set forth for it to do. But it also has to, in my opinion, look good. It should look good. You should take pride in whatever it is that you build or you create on your own property. So there are ways to do things inexpensively, with the right set of carpentry skills, etc., with the materials that you have on hand. But you need to take pride, and you can't just slap it together. I realize that there is times where temporary fixes need to be made, but as I grew up on a farm, I know that sometimes those temporary fixes become permanent temporary fixes, and you want to make things look as good as you can, performing its practical role in whatever task or idea that you have for its use. So, with that in mind, that increases, if you pioneer back to a rural state like Iowa, which I think that if you're listening to this as we have listeners out in Los Angeles, and we've got listeners in Texas, and we've got listeners on the East Coast, and if you're living certainly in Minneapolis, now that's a large city in a rural state. We have Des Moines, which is our largest city in a rural state. There's plenty of room out here in the Midwest for you to be able to buy a home, an acreage perhaps, even if it's a home in a small town, you'll find that the lots are larger. What you can get for square footage in your home in a state like Iowa is far superior size-wise for the money than what you can get in the big cities. And so take a moment and consider moving to a great place like Iowa or the Midwest in general, or a rural state, anywhere, a rural area, because we live in a time where we have lost the skills and the appreciation for labor and for rugged individualism that does define the characters and the characteristics of the founders of this nation, people that did what needed to be done, but did it with a panache, and at the same time had a collection of skills and interests that they could share and build communities. And that's what makes our country, in my opinion, so wonderful. It was always the small towns that maybe became big towns, but it was always the small towns at first that you had these folks striking out and doing those things. They pioneered and started something new for their family for generations to come. And so I appreciate multi-generational ownership of land and ownership of property, and just keeping the family as close as you can, which requires a constant look into the future as to development for careers and jobs and industry and all of those things. And so that is, in my opinion, the best part of the 4th of July, is just celebrating the nature of our establishment as a country, very bravely setting forth and establishing a new nation, as Abraham Lincoln would say, to do something not just in rebellion, but in complete creation of a new form of government by the people and for the people. And so what a wonderful weekend it was. The funny thing about 4th of July is that my wife, who manages an RV dealership, she pointed out that, you will get an email, like a sales email. Somebody's, on Christmas Eve, they should be spending time with their family, but somebody is on the interwebs and they're looking at buying an RV. So you'll get a sales email on Christmas Eve or New Year's Day, sometimes on Easter, and maybe on Christmas Day or whatever it happens to be, but no emails on the 4th of July because America is celebrating its birthday. And it doesn't matter what, there's no emails and sales on the 4th of July. People are out on the boat or out in the backyard, spending time with family and friends, shooting off fireworks, which in Iowa we can do. We can. There's another reason to pioneer back to the great state of Iowa, is that we can shoot off fireworks to our heart's content. Obviously, there are some rules in town when you're close, and if it's really dry out, you probably shouldn't be doing a lot of things, a lot of fireworks that do set fire. And we had some incidents this month already where the people were injured or killed or property was damaged from fireworks. But I'm going to credit that to Hold My Beer, Watch This, which is probably how most of those unfortunate situations have occurred. So when you take a look at property in Iowa, now I know now that I've got, after last week's episode, and last week's episode, talk about a firecracker episode. I was pretty proud of that. I thought we did a good job. We won't be doing any parodies today, and I'm kind of pressed for time, so it'll be a little bit of a shorter episode. But I know, based on different forms of communication, that there are many school officials in the state of Iowa now who have listened to last week's episode and the Brewweiser episode, and they seem to enjoy it tremendously. But this one might throw those, if they're listening this week, might throw them off just a little bit, because when it comes to striking out and pioneering back and that rugged individualism, if you set forth and you create a property, like you've purchased a property, whatever it happens to be, in land. That's one of the key factors of our nation, is that you have the ability as an individual to own private property. That's not how it is, even to this day, necessarily around the entire planet. But sometimes it makes me wonder, particularly with property taxes, do you really own anything? Because if you buy a piece of property, if you buy this acreage, for example, and you go out and you build a house on it, you drill the well, you run the electricity to it, you put a garage on, maybe a shed, you have improved this property, you do your landscaping, you plant trees, you shrubs, you got your flowers, it looks beautiful. That increases the valuation of your property. So when I say that you should make your property that you own not only be practical for whatever use it is that you've determined it to be used for, it should also be beautiful. But when you enhance and improve the property with practical buildings that are also beautiful, then the assessors use their spies, and they come out and they determine what your valuation is. So there is a little bit of a disincentive to improve your property in any way, because why would you want to continue to pay rent in the form of property taxes to the government so that they can continue to mismanage their money and demand more funds as their salaries and benefits go up and our services decrease? So one of the things that went along with the song in the episode last week with the Brewweiser Real Men of Genius song was an indication that the Iowa legislature, which is a supermajority on the Republican side, one of the things that they did, and they get a lot of credit for, as they should, they did reduce property taxes in Iowa. So it's a bit of a shell game, though, as I've said before, because in the year prior to that, almost in anticipation that this is what they were intending to do. So congratulations on the foresight of reducing property taxes. So that's a political win by reducing property taxes in Iowa. It looks good, and you were rated friendly on the different entities and organizations that rate states based on their tax friendliness. So Iowa reduces its income tax a couple of years ago, which is great. And then they reduced their property taxes this year. But last year they had changed the way that the property valuations are assessed. And that means that they actually raised taxes on properties to some degree because they said, well, we've cut your taxes. There's a flat rate, that we have, based on your type of property, et cetera, et cetera. And but the year prior to that, they changed how valuations could be assessed, and so everybody's valuations went up, and in some cases doubled. And so this might not, whereas I may have really impressed school officials across the state with my tongue-in-cheek episode last week, this particular idea is maybe not as well received by that same group of people, partly because most of our public school districts, they receive their income from property taxes. And so my thought process is I'm irritated that I have to so as I continue to improve the land, as we talk about on this show, and I take pride in the buildings that we make and in the beauty that we intend to maintain while we're still alive and in charge of this garden that God has given us, I continue to have to pay rent in taxes on the property which I already own. And the county didn't do anything to help me purchase this land, or they didn't do anything. The government didn't do anything. We bought this land. We have improved it. We paid for the buildings that we've put on it. We've paid for the renovations. We've paid for all of that, which has all improved our local economy because we used local builders and we buy from local merchants, and they get sales tax from those things which we buy. And yet we continue to pay property taxes like you do. And if you don't pay your property taxes then you get in arrears, and then you're in real trouble because then the mafia will come and they'll just take your property from you. So it doesn't matter how much you've spent on it. You still have to pay this rent in property taxes. And that's the system that we've established in this country. And so thinking of it differently can become, that's a challenge. It's very difficult for people to think differently about how property taxes and their assessments. And so my proposal to the conservative Republican supermajority in the state of Iowa, when it comes to property taxes, if you really want to make an impact, then what you need to do is find that you've maintained that you've lowered the rates across the state, but your assessment system is messed up. And that was kind of the gift to places like the counties and the cities, the municipalities, the schools, the public schools. I mean, that was a quote unquote gift in that the assessment value went up. It's like, okay, well, fine, let's leave that where it is now, and from now on, any property your property tax cannot be based on what the random assessor in the county decides that your property shall be evaluated at year after year after year. I'm going to save them labor. I'm going to make their office a lot easier, and we're just going to go on real property sales, which means property tax should be based solely on the paid price of which the individual or individuals who purchased that property initially bought it for. That is the actual valuation, because that is the valuation that the purchaser agreed with the seller at the point of sale that it should be worth. That is the true valuation of the property. So if you own property for 50 years, you would only pay your valuation on what it was that you purchased that property without any other sales of property on that same property 50 years ago. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you love to pay taxes on property? Not that anybody loves property taxes, but wouldn't you love your valuation to be based on, for instance, what we bought our property for in 2008? That would have been fantabulous. That would be great, because the amount of time and love and money and effort, labor, all of those things that we have invested into this property since 2008 had nothing to do with any of the local governments whatsoever. And what we purchased this property for in 2008, we have done nothing but improve it. So we were incentivized out of a sense of duty and responsibility as a property owner to take care of our property, and we wanted to create a nice place for our children and someday our grandchildren to live, I would suggest to you that it would be great if we were just paying property taxes on what we purchased it for in 2008. Because the improvements we've made since then, the assessor's office has made tremendous note of. And after the legislature changed the assessment rules and valuations last year, boy, we have seen a incredible spike. So is Iowa still a tax-friendly state? It depends on who's writing the press release. I would say no. But wouldn't it be revolutionary if for property taxes, your valuation can only be based on the sale of the property and the transfer of ownership. And that's the value. We don't need assessors to come out and do some weird math and, figure things out. We don't need them driving around and poking around and driving through people's yards and taking pictures and using satellite images. We don't need any of that. It's very simple. It's a recorded deed, and the property is sold at a price. That was the agreed price. Therefore, that is the true market valuation at that time. And that is what the property is worth until it is sold again, at which time it resets based on the new property valuation, which would encourage people to stay around a little bit longer in our small communities, to pioneer back, which would encourage people to stay in their home. And it would encourage people, and they would be incentivized to improve their property and to keep their property looking good. Now, it would probably be just devastating to local governments and to our schools that are dependent upon this ever-increasing valuation of property taxes to continue paying for the things. I got some solutions for that. I don't know how the counties and municipalities will do. I got some ideas for the counties, actually. How do we get past then what that devastation would occur? It would be great for the taxpayer. That would be a true win for the Iowa taxpayer. Is if and to me that's the fair market value, because it was established in a free market economy by buyers and sellers who have come upon an agreement. And maybe you make some rule. Maybe there's a rule that revolves around if something is foreclosed, because foreclosure sales are always basement bargain prices. But maybe you don't make any rules like that. I don't know. We'll see. I think my solution for the schools, the legislature could just stop telling us how to spend our money, for one, provide, loosen our spending authority to the local school boards can determine how to spend the money, and remove silos. Silos are those, these are the individual places that certain monies can be spent. They fall into your silo, your general fund, or your PEPAL, and they can only spend and dozen others. The legislature has decided that this is a silo, and this is money that you can only spend on these things, and this is a silo, and it only can be spent for. It all goes through the school districts across Iowa, but the freedom of the local elected school board to determine where all that money goes should be left up to the school board, and the legislature should be hands off. Of course, they can't, because even though they pretend like they care about small government and hate government overreach, they really love throttling our public schools at the current supermajority of the legislature. They just have a hard time giving up power and authority, which is true for any party. I mean, it wouldn't be, it's just the Republicans are no different than the Democrats. Everybody wants to control everything, and so if you truly believe in that type of freedom, then give it up. Let the school boards decide how they're doing that. Now, the argument against that is that some school districts are not going to be managed very well. And I'm coming from a position where we have an outstanding superintendent. In fact, we've got the state's best superintendent, according to an award last year. The primary job is obviously knowing how to operate a school district as a CEO, which is fiduciary in its probably its largest capacity. And so if you make a hire for a superintendent who is your chief executive officer of your school district, and you make that decision based on, say, solely or practically or partially on DEI principles, then it's possible that you are going to come up with a pretty poor planning, financial planning situation. But if you make the hire of your superintendent based on their fiduciary responsibility and their ability and acumen for foresight into the spending and budgets and creative practices of financing in a school district into the future, then you'll probably be just fine. And if you have a good elected school board that pays attention to those numbers and operates and manages and also delegates to their capacity, then which is in the hands of the voters, I think we'll be all right. People continue to buy and sell property. Valuations will, in that way, continue to go up, but they would definitely be throttled back quite a bit. And people would probably, I'd say, if you're on the public sector side of things, you're probably not in favor of what I'm just proposing. But I feel like with the right people in these positions of leadership, the right foresight, and the freedom to operate your budget outside of silos and your spending authority not being throttled back. In other words, say voted PEPL, the ability to put to the taxpayers, not just bond issues, but to put other things to the voters and say, hey, we want to do this, and it's going to cost this, and we're gonna add a penny to this sales tax, or whatever we're going to do. The local school board has that authority, but the legislature controls how much and at what limits they can do that. And I think that's the wrong answer. If you live in a school district that wants to run something put it to the voters for a new tax or something like that, an abatement or whatever happens, not an abatement, but if that's what the local school district wants to do, and the school board is for it, and they put it to the voters, and the voters are for it, then that's up to the people that live in that school district. That's kind of how our democratic republic works. But the Iowa legislature is having a hard time freeing themselves of the reins when it comes to the public schools. And so I think in that regard, the new listeners that are across the state that are in the superintendent field, and then public school officials that are listening now, I think they would all agree with that. If the legislature would just lay off and let us, as I've said before, have the same rules as the private schools and not vice versa, we would be in a truly competitive market, which is what they claim, as if they've actually read Thomas Sowell, but I doubt that they have. Then they would actually be in that they'd be pointing Iowa in the right direction. And then it would be particularly easy, whoever becomes governor, to promote the state of Iowa, to pioneer back from the terrible places like California and the big cities and the seaboards and all of that stuff. And even from Florida, where it's getting, it's beautiful weather sometimes, and California's beautiful weather, but the politics is not great. Come out, be a rugged individualist, enjoy rural life, be part of a small school system, truly enjoy the pleasures of living in a community that cares for one another. And who we all are. Those are good things. And it would be a lot easier to do that, to say, listen, you're going to pay your property tax on this. Yes, we can't get rid of property tax in general. And it's going to be at the rates that are established by the legislature in this most recent legislative session, but you're only going to pay it on the amount of the agreed upon value for which you purchased it that one time, not in perpetuity. And the counties will say, municipalities will have, they'll have to figure out their budgets too. They have locally elected boards and supervisors as well. I've got a solution for that. And it's not my original solution. It's been out there for a while. I truly believe that we can consolidate our counties. We have 99 counties in Iowa. And this has been something that I've been talking about for many years. And obviously the county people do not like this idea whatsoever because it's their livelihood. The purpose of, when you have 99 counties like we do in Iowa, everybody has a recorder. They all have an auditor. They've got their county supervisors. They've got their treasurer. They've got, the sheriff. These are all elected officials. And they've got their, like I said, the supervisors and whatnot. And then there's an engineer in every county. And then there's, There's public health nurses. There's all kinds of people that are in every single county, and it's incredibly at the leadership level duplicative, in my opinion. We have 99 county courthouses that were built at a time when communities took pride in their courthouse, and it was a little bit of a competition, and so that's why we have these magnificent 19th century courthouses made of stone, and the masonry was fantastic. And of course, they have been showing their age, and it costs quite a bit of money to keep them up, and they are not necessarily suited for modern operations. We've also come into a world where AI is a reality and incredibly beneficial and scary in some ways, but the digitization of our record keeping and our abilities to digitize things and complete things online, for example, and automate have long been tested and obviously work very well. In fact, one of Governor Kim Reynolds' best things that she did as she becoming a legislator in Iowa, she had been at the county courthouse level and had always been and understood the significance of being able to do things online, to automate. For example, licensing on vehicles. She understood that. It makes sense. You can do amazing things online. You can order whatever you want anymore on Amazon, and it'll be here the next day, or sometimes the same day, or just a couple of days later. But it's incredible. Everything is automated, except when it comes to our 99 counties. The automation process is incredibly slow. It has purposely, in my opinion, not been done so that people can maintain their role. People argue that, the old folks need to come in and pay their bills in person at the county courthouse. And maybe that's true. It's the same argument that I hear from local legislators of why do we need to have the established newspaper. Like we have, there's a law in Iowa that for you to post your public notices, which is a rule. So we have to post the minutes, the meeting times of, say, the school board or the city council or the board of supervisors. Anything public has to be posted publicly. And so since the 1800s, you have to designate a newspaper of choice where you are going to post all of it. Now, that's not free. Those entities, the school board, county supervisors, municipalities, etc., they have to pay for that space in the newspaper. And it's not like it's nothing. Look, nothing against local newspapers or small newspapers. It's just, there's not much to them anymore, to be completely honest with you. And why would there be? Because everybody is on the internet, and your notification process. Technically, you have to be able to just you could post your agenda and your meeting time on the front door of your window of your office, and people can see it. It's publicly posted. And so you see that frequently in courthouses and the city councils and whatnot in small towns. But it has to also be in the newspaper. And so I've said this is a stupid law. Like, are we in the 19th century now? Are we still doing this? We don't have the interwebs. And the argument has been that it's there's still a lot of people out there that don't understand how to use the internet. And I agree, that is true. But even my dad has a smartphone now, right? And he's pushing 80, so he's got a smartphone. He knows how to look that up, and he's found YouTube to be very useful late in his life as he's fixing stuff in the farm shed and so forth. So people can learn, they can adapt. I think that's there are people who don't know how to use that, but there was a period of time when I was growing up when we were like, remember all those illiteracy commercials, like your dad can't read. It's kind of, that's the new form of illiteracy. And there is a level of illiteracy, but we have reduced illiteracy in this country over the course of my lifetime down to hardly zero, or practically zero. And we can do the same thing, and eventually we will, with technology and notification. Not necessarily as a cost savings measure, but just as the reality that automation works, and the free information that is available on the internet is there. And everybody, including the counties and the cities, the school board, they all have their own websites. It's publicly available. It's free. You can go there anytime on any device. And that's how you would know. You can even do push notifications, particularly for, say, like the school board does push notifications all the time for things that are happening in the community school districts. We have no need for these designated newspapers. And in the same way, everything, just about everything, including bill paying, driver's licenses, renewals, all of that stuff could be done online. There's a tremendous amount of savings that are involved with that just on the single county level, but extrapolate that to 99 counties. The idea of the districts is, I don't know if it's 10 districts or 12 districts or 15 districts in the state of Iowa, based on population and services, and you could consolidate a variety of these county governments together. So you'd still just have one sheriff, but maybe that sheriff represents 5 counties. And that is interesting, isn't it? Because that one sheriff gets paid the same as what our current sheriff gets paid, but that allows for 4 other sheriffs to not exist and on the pay charts. Nothing against sheriffs. I'm just using this as an example of how it would work. Same thing for treasurers, auditors, recorders, et cetera, et cetera. And as I've already said, I'm going to make the assessor's job a heck of a lot easier because they just go by real estate bill of sales that doesn't change until the next sale is made. And so this reduces a tremendous amount of duplicative spending, reduces IPERS situations. It reduces certainly health benefits to some degree. But here's what it also does: even if it didn't save a tremendous amount of money, you would still say, for example, you could get a sheriff's deputy for $50,000, but a sheriff makes $120,000, $130,000. So I could get two new deputies out of one sheriff. So if I consolidated 5 districts or 5 counties into one district, I get 10 deputies that I didn't already have in exchange for 4 sheriffs, and I would still save, $80,000. Maybe I get another deputy if I wanted to keep it all in public safety. The same thing for your services. If you automate your services and say a lot of the treasurer's office stuff, which currently is, a lot of that is already automated, recorders, auditors, things like that. All of those things become more automated. Then you don't have quite the staff responsibility that you had before. When you consolidate counties together, you save money in that regard. And if you need to improve services, you have, say, for example, in the secondary roads, in every county, there's an engineer. Well, if there's a district, there's one engineer. Just one, and maybe an assistant engineer, or whatever, and then they have again, same thing, same principle as with sheriffs and deputies. Now I'm able to provide more services because I could potentially hire, say, more truck drivers, more road graders. I could buy better equipment that lasts longer, et cetera, et cetera. Because on the management level, we don't need to have that at 99. Then you wonder about the supervisors. Now, supervisors don't get paid as much. They're in that $30,000, $40,000 a year, plus benefits and contributions and so forth. But so whether it's 3, 5, 7, whatever they happen to have on their particular county, you consolidate those again. They still have to represent. They still have to come from their district, and they still have to be represented. But maybe your districts get a little bit bigger. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe the supervisors get paid a little bit less. Maybe they don't meet as often. And so there's just a variety of ways to do it, and none of them like it. None of the people that work currently and get a check from the county like the idea of consolidating, although it wouldn't affect the people who do the work and provide the services. So the paramedics and the road graders and the people who move the snow and the folks in the office who do the processing that can't be automated, et cetera, et cetera. But it does change how people are elected and who people are represented. But it has already been done in our history. At one point, the townships in every county were also in this situation. And now you don't even know who your township representatives are. And they don't get paid. And they meet maybe once a year, so there are ways to do this that are quite cost efficient. And if you do that, then it is possible, in tradition of our revolutionary forefathers, to not like taxes, to find a way to do things more efficiently, and to, particularly in rural America, to be smart. Not the way that it has always been, but just to be innovative and individualist, and also hopefully provide a place that people feel comfortable from wherever they are currently living to pioneer back to places like the great state of Iowa and rural states all across the United States of America. So on this post-4th of July weekend, I wish you the absolute best week possible, and I look forward to meeting with you in conversation once again next week as you mull over these ideas of consolidating counties into districts, saving money in that regard, and what do you think about my crazy tax assessment valuation set back to the original purchase price and only changes when it changes hands, because that is the honest, true, fair, actual valuation as agreed on in a free market in real property. All right. There you go. There you go, America. I hope you have a great week and you continue to improve your property. Go out there, do great things. Keep an eye out for that assessor. And always try to be the sunny side of someone else's life.
When the shadows fall and doubts begin to creep, remember together we're strong, never weak. Lift your neighbor up with kindness every day. Let your actions speak the words you want to say.
The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. None of this is possible, of course, without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory.
Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life in Christ be made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.